Yep, you good?
Cool. Awesome. So we are using YouTube Live for the first time. No, we're getting used to it. I don't know anything about it. So we'll do our
You guys
best.
aren't on
You guys
there,
are fine.
it's just Kate. You're not on the video.
You're not on the video,
Yeah.
it's just pointing towards me.
Yeah.
So all good. So if there's anyone that is watching, they can ask questions and you'll get a notification. Is that right? We think.
We'll try.
We'll try. We'll see. I think anyone watching from home can ask questions and it'll come up in a chat, I think. Anyone here, please feel free to ask questions as much as you want. I don't necessarily like quiet audiences all the time, so please throw things at me and ask away. This isn't a time to be quiet. Get as much out of me as you possibly can. So we are talking about exercise and mental health today. This is a little bit of a passion of mine. I am an exercise physiologist for those that don't know me. I work full-time at St. John of God up the road at Richmond, so in a psychiatric hospital. That is my specialty in terms of my practice. And then I work here on Wednesday nights as well. Torturing people with bar classes. However you say it. Sometimes. So I really wanted to bring this out. I am doing my master's in neuroscience and mental health, which is why this is such a big passion for mine, because what we're finding, there's such a huge link between what goes on in the brain, the body, and movement. Movement has this capacity to do so much for us. So a lot of the research now is coming into, well, how does movement impact the brain and the biology and the structures? So that's what we're going to delve into just a little bit tonight. I'm not going into full science mode. Anyone wants to ask me the full sciencey stuff later, I'm more than happy. I think other people might get a little bit bored with I'm going into the intricacies, but totally up to you. So when we think mental health, sometimes there's a bit of a stigma about it. We think, it's all to do with the head and whatnot. But ultimately what mental health boils down to, it's a biological process that's happening in the brain. It's either chemicals that aren't being produced in the right numbers that we need, structures in the brain aren't operating efficiently, there might be overactive, underactive, the connections, so the neurons that are going on in the brain, they might be sort of disconnected. So there's all these things going on. But in essence, every mental health condition comes down to some sort of a biological process. So just like we have all of our other illnesses like cardiovascular disease, respiratory issues, you break something, it's biological, and that's what mental health actually boils down to. It's just that what happens, because it's in our brain, when we get those things happen, it comes out as different symptoms. Like we see depressions, anxieties, behavioral issues. So we see those things come out because of what's actually happening in the brain. So sometimes when you realize it's a structural or chemical imbalances and what's going on, you're like, oh, there's actually a reason. It's not just me, there's something going on. Just like, so you can't get up in the morning because maybe your leg's really sore, or your back's tight, and it's because maybe something's going on. Exactly the same as what's going on here. So, just a very quick overview. I'm going to give you a little bit of a biology lesson about some chemicals and brain structures that are commonly involved in mental health. Don't worry, it won't take you back to high school or anything like that. I promise it's a bit more interesting. Then I'm going to look at different exercise interventions, like your aerobic exercise, your strength training, yoga, and high intensity exercise, and how they impact a few different conditions and sort of what we know at the moment. And then just some other general considerations about lifestyle and how it all impacts each other and how it all works in together. So whether or not I get through absolutely everything in the hour, I will try my best. I generally find I do a very similar presentation to this for the patients at work, and it can take me up to an hour and a half. So I'll get through as much as I possibly can, but please feel free to ask as many questions, ask away at any time. Completely all good. So we're going to start with these key chemicals. So there's a lot of chemicals. They can be hormones, neurotransmitters, all different things. I'm just calling them chemicals for ease. It's much easier to understand. So these are the 4 key ones that we see in the brain that we're working with mental health. So your first one are your endorphins. I'm assuming people may have heard of endorphins throughout their life. They're like happy. There's that Legally Blonde quote, if anyone's seen Legally Blonde. It says exercise gives you endorphins, endorphins make you happy. Happy people just don't kill their husbands. It's a common line out of it, out of Legally Blonde. The other really cool thing that endorphins do is that they're actually a natural pain reliever. So when endorphins are released, they attach into the same neurotransmitters into the brain that your opioids, so things like your codeines, that sort of medication, that helps obviously relieve pain. Your endorphins attach into the same neurotransmitters in your brain, so it provides a natural pain relief. And it's why we say that exercise is good for chronic pain. It's one of the things that we do. I know people sort of think it might be counterintuitive, but it's actually not. Not saying it's easy, but it is one of those things. And what they do is they help to regulate your mood. So it's not just making you happy, it can actually just bring you to a nice sense of calm. For those people that have ever done really intense exercise in their life, may have been runners or anything, it's called a runner's high, where you get that endorphin rush of things or happiness or excitement. That's the chemical that's coming out. So that's a really key player in mental health. And what we find is that people struggle to get that endorphin release, hence that depressive sensations that can come through. The next one is serotonin. Now, serotonin is pretty much involved in every condition. PTSD specifically, essentially serotonin is not used well in the body. And in depression, same thing, anxiety, all the same thing. So serotonin is this really key chemical. It's a neurotransmitter that we actually need. And if I asked you, where do you think most of serotonin is made in the body, where would you say? Like if I said, where does your body make the serotonin? Bulk of it.
Well, I'm reading here. Brain and gut.
Okay, so how much is made in the gut? What's your percentage?
Well,
Do you want to estimate?
I'm thinking a lot.
Ooh, okay.
Because I've been reading a bit about it.
Oh.
So I'm thinking, I'm maybe exaggerating,
No.
8%?
95% of the serotonin in your body, up to 95% of it's made in your gut. So if your gut isn't well, you're not eating well, and this isn't right, this can't be doing everything right. So that's why we see in mental health, a lot of people are on what we call SSRIs, so selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SNRIs. So they actually help to modulate the serotonin in the brain so that things work a little bit better. Then we've got our dopamine. Dopamine is this key chemical in, once again, pretty much all of these different mental health conditions, because it's involved in your memory formation. So it's very hard to file memories away. So we file memories away when we sleep. So without the dopamine, we can't do that. It also, dopamine is required for motivation. So if you think about it, people with mental health conditions, their motivation is usually somewhere in the gut, doesn't really function very well. The dopamine levels are generally extraordinarily low. So with exercise, we can promote dopamine, but it's, if you think about it when you're not well mentally, your ability to form memories, recall things, maybe even learn things, you'd be like, I swear I was just going into another room. It just doesn't work very well because you're lacking this really key chemical that's involved in memory recall and then forming it overnight. And then there's this, I call it the Goldilocks chemical called BDNF. I've written it out there, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So it's this phenomenal chemical that we have in our brains, and it goes all through our bodies. What it does is it actually helps our brain to restore neural connections. It is key to pretty much all mental health conditions. There's a lot of research coming out with it now. The really interesting part, well, good for me, is that one of the best ways to get it produced in the body, you can't take a pill for this. This is not something you can pop a pill for, is exercise. So that's a win for anyone that prescribes exercise. So I'll go into that more. But what it does, it also helps with the memory formation and recall. Without it just doesn't work. So there's a part in your brain which will go into nets. It says down the bottom, found in high levels in the hippocampus. So you can see up there on your paper, there's these pictures of your brain, and these are the three key areas that we're looking at. So I'll start with the hippocampus. So it is tiny. This tiny little part of your brain, really, in comparison to everything, that's responsible for your memory formation and recall, learning, that sort of thing. It is also responsible for controlling that little red bit called the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is this tiny, tiny little bit again, and it's responsible for managing your fear and anger and those sorts of emotional responses. So in a lot of what we find in a lot of mental health conditions, the hippocampus isn't working very well. It's very underactive. It's not firing. It's particularly with PTSD, we see that it doesn't fire. So it can't control that amygdala that's controlled with the fear responses. So if you think about it, if you've got the part of your brain that tells something to say, no, you don't have to fear this, not working, everything, you're scared of everything, and that happens in anxiety as well. So we've got these two really key parts of the brain that just aren't working very well at the moment in a lot of mental health conditions. Don't want anyone to worry too much, but what they do find is in cases of PTSD, anxiety, and some depression, what we find is that there is a reduction in size in some people with these conditions of their hippocampus. So
Does
they
it become that? Or
so it shrinks because it's
not being used
so
functioning properly?
yeah, so what actually happens is that the stress hormones that come out in your body when you're in these conditions, it creates a lot of other like inflammatory responses through the body and the brain that are actually killing the neurons. So it actually destroys the connections in that part of your brain. Cool bit. What were you going to ask?
Can it rejuvenate?
I was about to say,
Okay.
cool bit. Yes, you can actually. BDNF is the key to all of that. So BDNF is found in really high concentrations in the hippocampus. So if we can get that going, we can actually see that working a lot more optimally.
That exercise builds. Going back to yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's very, very cool what they're finding out now. The research is still it's still very new. If you think about what we're starting to know about mental health now, like if you think back, say even pre-COVID, like we knew but we didn't know, if you sort of, it makes sense. We're starting to learn a lot more. There's a lot more research going on, and now that they've seen this BDNF, it's starting to take over because it seems to be a key chemical in pretty much every single mental health condition. So that's those two. And then the other key area that's impacted in just about everything is your prefrontal cortex. So it sits at the very front of your brain. It's like the motherboard. Everything comes into it and it tells everything where to go. It's like, you go there, you go there. It's like the sorting. The problem is a lot of the time we find that's where a lot of the neural connections are also damaged in mental health because of the stress and the chemicals that come in, and it does create some damage through there. Doesn't fire, like prefrontal cortex doesn't connect as well to the hippocampus, and so you're not getting those messages through. It's sort of like goes here, hits a speed bump, maybe goes that way, goes a long way around, and it's lost in translation, like Chinese whispers sort of thing. So it's not all bad news. It's just I like to give people information so that for someone who might go, why is my memory so bad? Like, why can't I remember anything? There's a reason. It's because the actual structures of your brain that are responsible for that function are not optimally working. So it's not you, it's quite literally your brain. So, but good news, we can do a lot to it. The other area that has anyone heard of the vagus nerve before? Some people have, some people haven't. So it's like this nerve, I've got a picture of it, you can see where it goes. Starts right up in the brain, travels all through your body, goes to your heart, your lungs, through your gut, all the way down to your bladder. It touches, it's everywhere. And this is the key nerve of what we call the parasympathetic nervous system. So you've got two systems. You've got the one that's your fight flight. So something happens, you tense up, adrenaline starts pumping and you want to run. This is the opposite. We call it the rest and digest. So it's when you can calm, your digestive system kicks in and you're just like, yep, happy. So what we find in mental health is that this nerve and the whole system of this nerve is not really working very well. We can't get into this parasympathetic nervous system. So people with anxiety, PTSD, just can't seem to get it. They're always in fight flight. They're always quite anxious, sort of, the heart rate's always up. You can also have other strange symptoms. I put some like taste issues. You could have bladder issues. You might feel your skin crawling all the time. You can't really understand why. It's because this nerve isn't working optimally. So we just can't tap into it. But once again, there's a lot that we can actually do with movement to tap into it. So if anyone's done yin yoga, I know some of you have done it with Adriana, 1 or 2 classes with me. It's that calming sensation where everything just goes and you just settle in. And that's tapping into this rest and digest. system. So you're not going to tap into that with the more intense exercises, but we'll go through all of those anyway so that you've got a bit more of an idea. Alrighty, this is the one, what is an exercise physiologist? Because a lot of people don't really know what we are. We're not new, but I guess it's only been more recently that we're getting more and more popular and people are starting to know what we do. So we are university qualified. We do 4 years or longer at university. We have to do prac. We've got a governing organisation. We work within all the insurance schemes, your DVAs, your work cover, private health insurance, Medicare. We work across absolutely everything. And the easiest way to describe what we do is that just like doctors, so doctors prescribe medication, we prescribe exercise in dosages to get the results that we're targeting. So if it's mental health, if it's a muscular issue, if it's, say, a metabolic issue, we talk about the goals and then we tailor that exercise and we prescribe it so that we can target those body systems to get the production of chemicals or the activation of the muscles how we want to get the results that we need. So we prescribe just differently. But unfortunately, it's not as easy as taking a pill. It means you actually have to do something with us. So it is a lot, and we do understand that. So with mental health, it's the same thing. So what we see is that when we're prescribing for mental health, we look at what people's target goal is. If they're struggling with motivation, if they're saying we're constantly anxious, I just can't settle, I don't know what to do, or it's I'm always really flat, I've got nothing, I don't know how to get that oomph back into my life. So then we're starting to look at, okay, well, which one of those chemicals are we trying to target? Are we trying to really activate this nervous system, or are we trying to suppress that one? How are we going to do it? So there's all different ways that we do, and we look to the science. So there's been lots and lots of studies. I would talk in the hundreds, if not the thousands, lots and lots of studies to guide us about what we need to do. Unfortunately, with science, there's nothing concrete, not in research. And because this is so new, and when I say new, there's results that are coming out as recently as January, February that have just been published about BDNF, mental health, PTSD, anxiety, depression. Like, they're all coming out very quickly. I would say over the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see huge advances in these lifestyle factors, particularly movement and how it impacts on mental health. I mean, considering we have a huge group of EPs at a psychiatric hospital, exercise physiologist. Oh yeah, so EP, exercise physiologist, just so I don't have to say the big word and get tongue tied. You're right. No, that's okay. So yeah, you'll find us in pretty much every single psychiatric hospital, whether it's acute, so people that are going, direct to a public hospital inpatient unit that are being taken there, maybe even against their will, we're there. We're involved in their care. So we are across absolutely all ranges of mental health because the science is really promising and it's exciting to see what you can do yourself without necessarily having to maybe take medication for the rest of your life. You may need some to start with and then transition, lower the dose, all different things. But we can actually help give you another sort of adjunct to join in with what you're doing as well. I guess the easiest way to explain as well is that we look at a whole person. So we adopt what's called a biopsychosocial approach. So we don't look at, say, just one part of you. We look at what's going on in your life, what's going on around you, what do you do for work, how are your relationships, do you have social connection, do you do anything outside of the house? So we're looking at the broader picture as well as the narrow picture. So that's what we do. A little bit different from other professions is that we try to look very holistically at people. So let's get into these. I'm just going to quickly go over a few of these. Are the 4 conditions. The number of mental health conditions are extensive. I cannot possibly cover them all, but I thought these are some really common ones. So depression, anxiety, PTSD, and substance use or addiction. So things that we see quite often, very high rates throughout Australia and the world in all of these. And you'll see that there's actually some similarities and symptoms between all of them. So with depression, most people sort of know it's this low mood, motivation is really not there. The fatigue, you feel constantly tired, you just don't have anything to get out of bed. You can have weight fluctuations. Some people, the weight will go on, other people, the weight will go off. Their appetite, either increase, decrease. It can really be all over the place. We find sleep issues, so either you sleep all the time, it's like you just can't wake up, or you just can't sleep. So every person's different. That's the one thing I will say, is that you can, just like any other physical condition, everyone can have it, but you're all going to present very, very differently. So that's why everything,
Is mood swings as well part of that, like a lower level of, I don't know, because I understand there's a difference between depression and mood.
So depending if you're going really, really low and if you're going to really, really highs, that's potentially a different disorder as well. You may have depressive times, so there's other disorders that you'll have the really big mood swings. What we find in depression, it's permanently low and we just can't, it's really a struggle. Like, people have described it to me when they've been in that really, really deep state, that even just swinging their leg to get out of bed to go to the bathroom is the biggest chore. Just mentally going to the toilet, that's like 5 meters away from them, takes like an hour to work themselves up to just be able to do that. It is so debilitating. It's very, very hard. But if you've got someone that you see that and then they're going into really big, excited, happy, high energy, that's likely to be a different condition, and that's one that a psychiatrist can definitely help with. So they do exist. This is the thing, you start with one and you can go to hundreds of them. So then you've got your anxiety, which I think most people have heard of. So it's normal for us to get stressed, but people that have got anxiety, it's really, really pervasive on them as well, like to the point where they'll be shaking like this all the time. They can't even grip water because they shake it everywhere. Just even going out of their room, sometimes they can have panic attacks just because of the thought of it. They can be really agitated, or they can be very quiet. Sleep issues, once again, either sleep a lot or can't sleep at all because they're too scared to go to sleep for whatever reason. Your concentration, very much non-existent with pretty much any of these conditions. So it's very hard to function in daily life when it is quite severe. Your heart rate, that's the one thing with anxiety. We'll see resting heart rates quite high. So when you go to sleep, generally we find resting heart rates come down sort of around the 60s, maybe low 70s. Some people are even in the 50s. With people with anxiety, I've seen people's resting heart rates be in the 90s and the low hundreds. So their heart rate just quite literally can't settle. So if you go for a brisk walk and you're not completely out of breath, but you're sort of, a little bit puffing, that's where their heart rate is sitting for some of them 24 hours a day. So that's what quite severe anxiety can be like. With PTSD, I think a lot of people have heard PTSD, especially with all the veterans and Royal Commissions and that sort of thing going on. It can also be a very debilitating disease, but also it can present in hundreds of different ways. For some people, they can be very quiet, withdrawn. Other people, they'll have anger coming out with them. They lose interest in doing any of their activities. So things that they once loved, they won't do anymore. That is also the same with depression and anxiety. Lose all hope, feel very hopeless. Motivation doesn't exist. So you can sort of start to see there's some really common threads going through each of these conditions. And then you've got addiction. So addiction's a little different. There is the cravings. Once again, you do lose interest in normal activities because the cravings are overtaking and they're forcing you to do something else. You do socially isolate, what we see in pretty much every single mental health disorder. There's social isolation, low mood, similar to depression, mood slumps. We usually find that addiction is paired with another mental health condition. It's very rarely seen just on its own. So what we can see is that I can see patients that have got all 4 of these. They've got a diagnosis of all 4, plus even some others. So they're not uncommon. So I just wanted to quickly go through those because now we're going to get into the fun bit. So let's start with aerobic exercise. I hope that doesn't send shivers down anyone's spine. Usually when we say aerobic exercise, there's some thoughts that come up, but this first sheet is a bit of explaining about how to do it and target heart rates, because that's what we're looking at. The one thing I will say is do not jump into an exercise routine straight away. If you've done nothing, don't go all out. Talk to someone, ease into anything. Don't go from 0 to 100 or you'll be sore and you won't walk for a week or two. So essentially aerobic exercise, we're getting our heart rate up. It's repetitive movement, whether it's walking, running, swimming, riding a bike, walking up and down stairs, hiking, any sort of movement that's repetitive that our heart rate's starting to get up. And what we talk about when we're prescribing for aerobic exercise, we're looking at target heart rates. So everyone's going to be different depending on their age, and then fitness is going to come into it too. So I've got up here, how do I calculate my heart rate? I've put an example in there of how to do it. So it starts with 220 minus your age, and that gives you your estimated heart rate max. And then from there, that's where we get our percentages. So I've put it for a 42-year-old up there. So technically a 42-year-old's heart rate maximum is 178. And then we look at 70% gives us 125 beats per minute, 80% 142, 90% 160 roughly. So what we see, so depending on what we're trying to elicit in the body, we want to look at different target heart rates. So that's why I've put this in here, because this is important. So this is what we base a lot of things off. If you don't have a fitness watch or anything, there's certain other ways that we can sort of get you to feel, oh yes, I'm probably sitting at that, we can test it, that sort of thing. But it's within yourself, getting to know your own body. You can actually figure that out for yourself as well. All right. Good old aerobic exercise. So what we're finding is that aerobic exercise is very good for releasing that BDNF, that good old chemical that we need to help restore our functions in our brain, help to grow our neurons. So it's excellent for that. The other thing it's very, very good for, so if you think about those stress conditions, what happens in the body? You get flushing, you go red, you're hot, you're sweating, similar to when you exercise intense. So what happens is that when we do aerobic exercise and we can get those biological responses going in the body, it starts to tell the brain, hey, not every time I feel that is something bad going to happen. So it's almost like desensitizing it. So it's sort of exposure, getting the body and the brain used to it. Because what can happen in mental health, specifically like PTSD, is that the brain will, anytime, say you even rush to get something, say someone forgot their wallet and you picked it up and you see them and you're like running after them, give it to them, your brain could interpret that as, oh, you're hot, you're flushed, you've been triggered, you're going into a full-blown meltdown. And you won't understand why. It's just your brain reacting to your body's responses. So by doing aerobic exercise, we can desensitize those responses, which is very exciting for people. And we've seen it work. It does happen. There's another measure, it's getting a little bit more sciencey, called heart rate variability. Essentially what it is, it's your heart rate to sit low, so a nice low resting heart rate, and then to spike with exercise or stress, and then come back to a nice low rest. So essentially it means that you can be relaxed, but you can get stressed. You can do anything like, under the pump, working hard, all that sort of thing, but you've got the ability to come back to rest. What we find in conditions to do with PTSD and anxiety, they don't have that ability to come back to rest because they're constantly in that fight-flight. So we need to get them down a bit. And so this is now coming out as a new measure, a new way for us to be able to see if we're having an impact on someone's mental health. That's some latest research that's just come out. So that's exciting for us. The other thing is, I hate to say it, but your physical health is fully linked to your mental health. So they go both ways. If your physical health is bad, there's a very high chance your mental health's bad. If your mental health's bad, there's a very high chance your physical health's bad. They're linked like that. They go hand in hand. And aerobic exercise helps with significant numbers of your physical health conditions. Anything to do with your heart, metabolic conditions, so like cholesterol, blood pressure, all of that, it's all linked. So aerobic exercise is unfortunately one of the best ways to help with that. It's great for releasing your dopamine, your endorphins, and your serotonin as well. So I've put a little bit here what we're with each different condition. So last year, have to say 2023 now, it's 2025. So there was a study that came out in 2023. It was with the University of South Australia and I can't remember the other party. So they looked at depression and the impact of exercise, talk therapy, medication. They looked at all three. And what they find is exercise is 1.5 times more effective than all of them. So we were more effective than talk therapy or medication in those doses. That was just that study, but that's exciting because that's starting to show the way. And then we've had a lot of feedback from people when I've said that before. People have thought back and gone, well, actually, yeah, when I've not done anything, I've not moved, I've just sort of sat around, yeah, I actually don't feel great. But when I start moving, they sort of can link it back and sort of see that there is some sort of anecdotal for them as well. So that was really exciting. With anxiety, it's really good for reducing muscle tension. So people that are anxious, you'll find that they clench. There's a lot of clenching, whether it's through the jaw, the shoulders, the lower back, they're like this. And exercise, especially aerobic exercise, it helps that to actually soften and relax. With PTSD, what they're finding is, so with PTSD, one of the issues is what we call rumination. So constantly going over the same things. It just keeps going over in the head. It actually has been found to reduce it. So the more aerobic exercise, the fitter you are cardiovascularly, the less that happens. My PTSD group rolls their eyes at me and has a laugh. And they're like, no. Then I make them do it and they're happy. It's really good for your sleep as well. If you think about it, if you're moving and you're using up energy, your body actually forces itself to rest at the end of the day. Physical health, as I said, they've found that aerobic exercise is great for memory improvement. So even if you don't have mental health conditions, if you find that your memory maybe isn't as good as what it used to be, aerobic exercise is excellent for it because it does produce that BDNF, so it can help to reform those sections of your brain that are responsible for memory and create new connections and rebuild that strength. So it's great for that. With addiction, what they're finding is that it's a heavy reduction of cravings, and what we're finding is that the parts of the brain that activate when people are, say, having a drink or taking an illicit drug, the same parts of the brain are activating when you're exercising. So if you think about that, it's like, well, hang on, could you replace that with that? Now, the one thing I will say cautiously, people can get addicted to exercise, and that is unhealthy, but generally we don't see it go that far. So that's why sometimes if addiction is a problem, getting guidance from a professional can be really helpful with that. But in all of that, I've put up here, so this fit that you'll see in all of mine, this is something that us as EPs, this is how we prescribe frequency, intensity, type, and time. That's sort of like the very basic of our prescription. So with aerobic exercise, pretty much every single study, you've got to do it 3 times a week. Every single study that's found it's helpful 3 times a week. It's not too bad. It's not 4 times, so it's less than half the week. Your intensity, they're looking at between about that 70. I love that. It's less than half. It's good. We're looking at that 70 to 80% of your max heart rate. So that's why it's important to know how to calculate your max heart rate, because that's what we want to be targeting, is that will help to produce the chemical levels that we're wanting. That's what the science is indicating to us at the moment. And then it doesn't matter what type, whatever you want. The one thing I will say is find something you enjoy. Don't do something you don't like, because no, it won't work for you, especially if mental health is your target. I'm not going to tell you to do 100 burpees and you just be like, yuck, not doing that. We want to still do something that you enjoy. So find something that you enjoy and just increase the intensity if it's a lower intensity. And then 30 minutes is your minimum. So one of the studies that came out specifically to do with, if you, I'm impressed. I refuse to do them. Not too long. You couldn't pay me enough money to do one of these. So
what would be a good one?
walking at a brisk pace,
Brisk walking is aerobic.
especially up a hill. So like, going up some hills, riding a bike, not easy. I'm not talking on a gentle flat, just, going up. I'm like, put some effort in. You've got to get that heart rate up. Swimming, people like swimming. If you like getting in the pool and you don't really want to swim, walk laps or run laps. Like if you haven't run in a pool before, it's really hard. because you've got all that resistance coming at you and you're trying to push through the water, your heart rate will get up very, very fast. So all different things. Dancing. If you like dancing, dance around your house for 30 minutes. Put your favorite music on and go for it. Gardening, cleaning. If you think about it, it's all movement. Vacuuming. I know if you've got a big place and you've got a vacuum for 30 minutes, you're pushing, you're doing everything. If you have a watch and you're tracking your heart rate, you'll see that heart rate is up pretty much the whole time. So it's any sort of movement that you want to get going, as long as you can get that heart rate up.
When you want to keep it at that 70 to 80%.
Optimally, yes. So initially you may not be able to do that, especially if you haven't done anything for a little while. Don't push yourself.
Well, you've got limitations.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So that's where you might want to like pull based or anything to
Yeah.
like adjust that. But start slowly. Even if you're only at that 50 to 60% for a few weeks, you build up to it. You're still going to get some benefit. This is like that optimal, that goal that you're working towards. And then for people that have got, say, PTSD, or we're looking more at that BDNF production, there was a study that came out that found, so it's still 3 times a week, but it's 40 minutes and at the 80%. So they found that produced a really optimal level of BDNF and significant memory improvements in people with PTSD and an anxiety condition. So this is the thing, science is still coming out, we're still learning every single day, but what we do know is that movement, it does work. We're still trying to work out the optimal dosages and prescriptions, but that's why when we work with you, we can tailor it every single week. You can say, I didn't feel it or I did feel it. It's like, okay, well, let's maybe change it up, drop it, intensify it, change it around. So that's your aerobic exercise. Then we're moving into what we call HIIT, or high intensity interval training. So if anyone hasn't heard of this before, if you've seen, say, F45 around boot camps, are generally some sort of HIIT training. It's essentially you train for a period of time, say 30 seconds, and then you have a short rest period. So you get your heart rate really, really high, and then you have a short rest. And you do that for about... The reason this one is very, very good for mental health is that it's the best way to manage your metabolic health. So when they're talking about sort of obesity and cardiovascular conditions, high intensity interval training is the gold standard, what we want to be aiming for. And then what we do find is that that is then highly linked with your mental health as well. This is the one where you get a very big release of endorphins. So because your heart rate is so high, you get at the end this high feeling. You feel really happy, that energetic, that pain, like if you've got that niggling pain, it's gone, you're not thinking about it. You just sit in that high. So it's a massive release of endorphins. And what they find is that it sounds counterintuitive. So you do high intensity, so your body's really pumping itself, but it actually can reduce inflammation in the brain because of the blood flow, the increased oxygen going through the body. So that's what they're starting to see in some of the research, is that the inflammation and all, I guess, the byproducts of the brain, because all your cells, every time your cells do things, like it's all happening through our bodies right now, there's byproducts, just like we eat food and then we have to get rid of the byproducts. That's what's happening in our cells all the time as well. So that happens in our brain, and with the increase in oxygen, blood flow, we can actually clear more of that out to reduce that inflammation. It's natural, it does happen to everyone, but high intensity interval training is a great way. The only thing I will say, it does take up to 4 weeks to see results, so it does take a little while. None of these, unfortunately, are quick fixes. So, but when it comes to these different conditions, so with depression, the evidence is limited at the moment. We don't have a lot. It's sort of very mixed. Some support it, some research supports it, some doesn't. So it's not saying that it doesn't work necessarily, it's just we don't have anything confirmed one way or the other, or dosage just yet. But what we do know is that it does release these chemicals like your endorphins, and it does have a dopamine release, and we know that they're both key in depression to lifting that mood. So while we don't have anything concrete, this is where we come in and we go, well, what are we looking at? We're looking at endorphin release, we're looking at increased motivation, driving. So if we do this sort of exercise high intensity, then maybe we'll see that increase in people with depression and start that motivation. So that's how we apply the science. Then you've got anxiety. Once again, it's not completely supportive at present, but what we do find with anxiety, there's a lot of adrenaline pumping around the body because you're in that fight flight mode, that pumped up energy going everywhere. So let's let it out somewhere. Usually at the end of 20 minutes of a HIIT session, you're flat on the ground, you're breathing heavily, you can't think about anything else. So we do actually use it for anxiety at work. So if you do think about it, people are getting anxious, flushing red. We may actually, it might seem counterintuitive, but it actually works quite well for people with anxiety. With PTSD, it's great because we get a massive release of BDNF. So they're very low in that with PTSD. So we do see a very high release of that. Very good for that hippocampus, which we see is heavily impacted. And then with addiction, what we find is that most addiction comes with quite significant amounts of physical health conditions, especially in the metabolic. We find that high intensity training does help with all of those. That's what we know from the science. Some of the science is now starting to indicate it has a higher impact on craving, sort of subduing those cravings than aerobic exercise. But that's new. That's sort of slowly starting to come out. So we're just waiting to see where that goes. Then we've got our resistance training. So weights doesn't have to be the weights that you normally would think. It can be resistance bands. It can be body weight. It can be absolutely anything. Once again, very good for your metabolic management, weight loss, cardiovascular conditions. Once again, very good for helping with your sleep, and it increases mindfulness. So mindfulness is a big aspect of mental health, which we see it's about being in the moment, being in tune with your body. If you think about it, if you're lifting weights, or for those that have you done the bar class or the fusion class with me, you're so focused on where your body's going, where that leg's going, are you bracing this, what's happening? You're not thinking about anything else, you're in the moment. So it's the same with lifting any weights. If you think even at home, if you're moving something really heavy, you're focusing on it because you know if you don't do it right, you're going to hurt yourself. So it's a very mindful activity. So we do find that we're seeing a lot of progress with this. Weights is essentially supported across the board of every single mental health condition. It is recommended that everybody does it. Once again, I'm sorry, it's 3 times a week. It's estimated. Now, the one thing I will say, it doesn't mean you have to do every single one of these. When you talk to us, we will set it out. We can usually get it down that you're only doing exercise 3 times a week, and we tailor it specifically for you. So you don't have to do a HIIT session, which I didn't go through that, sorry, it's 2 times a week. You don't have to do an aerobic session as well. You don't have to do a weight session, and then you also don't have to do yoga in all of those things because there's not enough days in the week and people have jobs and lives. So there are ways for us to tailor it, and that's why I say seek professional advice if you want to know how to do it for you. With resistance training, as I said, 3 days a week. Now, in terms of your intensity, if you're lifting heavy weights, so you're not doing body weight work, you're in the gym or at home and you've got heavy weights, we're looking at what we see about a 7 out of 10 intensity. So if you're at that, if you say lift, say 20 kilos 10 times and you say, oh, I could do that maybe 3 more times and I'm done, that's right. If you lift the 20 kilos 10 times, you go, I could do another 10 times. Then you need to up the weights. You're not going heavy enough. With resistance bands and say what we do in the Pilates and bar sort of class, that's different. So we're still working. So when I finish a set, I want you to be at that 7 out of 10. Like I could do maybe 1 or 2 more, but I'm tapping out. After that, I need a rest. So that's how we work with that. It's any type. It's like you can do whatever you want as long as it's some sort of resistance. And once again, 30 minutes minimum, optimally about 40 to 45, but 30 minutes minimum, we'll start to see some of those results coming through. So once again, it's all seeming sort of fairly similar. And then we've got our yoga. So this is the mindfulness part of it. There's a lot of misconceptions about yoga. It is not religious. A lot of people think that it is religious. It's associated with a specific religion. It is not. It is spiritual in the point that it's about, like what they say is that when you reach the final level, you're connected, like spiritually, your mind's open, that sort of thing, but it's not religious based. That's one thing I will say. There's so many types. I couldn't even list off every single type of yoga. They all work slightly differently. So depending on what you want to do, again, you're going to target different things. What the sort that I teach pretty much every single day is yin yoga and restorative yoga. Both of them are great with breath control, and they're fantastic for all of these conditions. More so the anxiety and PTSD and addiction in terms of the breath control, just because yin yoga, for those that haven't done it, you get to be put in really uncomfortable positions for about 4 minutes, and I teach you how to breathe through it and to hold it. So what happens is your body starts to become really comfortable when you're actually uncomfortable. And if you think about it with anxiety, cravings, maybe with your addiction, you've been set off by something in your environment you don't feel comfortable in, what happens is that you start to see that comfort increase and you can actually manage things. I've had a patient come back to me after doing 3 weeks of yin yoga with me, did it usually about 5 days of the week. He was actually able to see his family and spend time with his kids without taking medication that was designed to just be able to so he could tolerate it. And he said, I just used my breathing techniques that you taught me, and he was able to spend the whole day with them. So anecdotally, we've seen the results. Hopefully the second half of this year, there'll be a study on it, and then next year we'll be able to give some sort of concrete evidence in that. But yoga, different types, depressive symptoms, we've seen reports of it decreasing. This self-efficacy and confidence, we see a lot of people increase that across all mental health conditions. Sleep is the one thing that we see improve constantly, and the ability to control your emotions, which is quite important in pretty much every single mental health condition, to get that control over. 2 days a week, I mean, you can do it every day. It doesn't matter. Yoga is one of those things that you can do different variations pretty much every single day. It's low intensity, but it can go right up to high intensity. If anyone's done sort of a hatha yoga, they can be very intense. So intensity varies. All different sorts that you can do, minimum 45 minutes. That's what we're saying. You need to do at least 45 minutes to get that response in the body. So it's a bit nicer than some of the other exercises. If you want to ask me later about different sorts that you can do, I'm happy to sit and chat about that. And then these are some of our other considerations. So when we exercise, obviously we're getting all these benefits, and there's so many that I could talk about for hours, but I'm conscious of time. If you exercise in a group, it can actually magnify those benefits because of social connection. So we were at a conference on the weekend, and social connection is something that I've spoken about for quite some time. There's a part of your brain, it's called the social brain. It does rely on social connection and interaction. Report came out in 2023, and what it found is that social connection, or lack thereof, so without that social connection, you're actually more at risk of death than if you smoked 15 cigarettes a day. It's pretty powerful when you think about it. So if you exercise in that environment, and for those that have done group exercise classes, you know you sort of encourage each other, it's a bit more fun, there's laughter. So it has huge benefits for your mental health. And if you are sitting in a room, you've got 4 walls, you're in a gym, it's like, okay, fun, not. If you go outside and go for a walk in the bush, or you're going for a bike ride or at the beach, you're happier generally. So that has another impact. I could spend another hour talking about the impact of being outdoors on the brain. But what they're finding is if you can spend up to 2 hours a week outside, it has very positive effects on your mental health. Not 2 hours a day, just 2 hours a week, and in nice environments, not in the city. Not in that. So green spaces and blue spaces. And then, as I said, always seek advice at the beginning. Diet plays a big role. We talked about serotonin being produced in the gut. You may have heard of that mind-gut connection. What we're seeing is there's a lot of studies coming out about probiotics, the bacteria in the gut and the different impacts it's having on mental health. They're looking at different diets and the chemicals that those diets are targeting and how they're impacting the brain. Once again, I could spend another hour on that alone because it's really quite interesting. And then the one thing, I think I said it at the beginning, is that bringing movement into your life, changing diets, that sort of thing, it's a lifestyle change. It's hard. It's not easy. And at no stage do we ever say, and we think it's easy, because it's rough. If you've got no motivation, your mood's really low, or you're very anxious, you don't feel comfortable with other people, putting these things into effect can be very, very hard. So that's why sometimes seeking professional help, even if it's only once or twice, can actually be really beneficial. for you. Very quick. So we're still emerging with our evidence. It is starting to get there. As I say, next 5 to 10 years is very exciting. So it's very much a watch this space. Every person's prescription for exercise to target what they want is different. No two people are the same. We've all got different genes. We've all got different bodies, the way they work. So we need to actually tailor it for you to make it optimal. The one thing, something is always better than nothing, and find joy in movement. Don't do it if it's causing you stress and anxiety. That's not healthy. We want joy in the movement. We want it fun. We want to bring a smile to your face while doing it, because that's just going to make it even better for you. And then once again, discuss with an exercise physiologist that's got experience in mental health. It is quite a specialized area. We don't get a lot of training on it at uni. I'm going to lie. I think it was maybe 6 lectures. That was it. And a lot of what I've learned now has been from my masters, and I've shared that with a lot of other EPs around to help their knowledge and to obviously help everyone. So that's pretty much it from me. Does anyone have any questions? Want to know more? Ask anything?
I would be interested, how do you get someone that is in depression that gets out of bed to even
To
start?
start. So it's hard. Like it's very, very hard. If you can, obviously someone can take them to see an exercise physiologist. We use things like motivational interviewing techniques to talk to them, to sort of tease out like what's happening, setting goals, but doing it in a way that gives them some power and some confidence back. Because usually what we find, if someone's lying in bed all the time, they've got no self-confidence left. They don't feel empowered to make decisions about their own health. And when we give that back to them, you automatically see a bit of life start to come back into their eyes, and you go, okay, that's where we start to tap in. And it's about goal setting. It's not about saying, oh, walk for 30 minutes, 5 days a week. It's like, all I want you to do is get out of bed, do 5 squats, say 5 wall push-ups, go for a walk to the letterbox, come back, and then you can get back to bed. Do that 2 times a week. And what you find is that once people start, they'll go further. And when they're achieving their goals, they're like, hey, I could do that. And it builds that self-confidence. We're getting that motivation back. We're getting the dopamine hits. If someone's really struggling, try to get them to do something fun with you, like playing a game. Games are very, very underrated. So I'm talking Jenga, noughts and crosses, like throwing things into things, just anything. Get them moving, kicking a ball, throwing a ball to each other. That sometimes is very, very underestimated in how much fun and joy that can create. One of the most popular games that we play with the patients at the hospital is noughts and crosses, but we use Pilates rings set out, so 3, 3, 3, and they've got coloured sandbags, and they're throwing from a line to try to get 3 in a row. You would not think that that sort of game would create the level of laughter and smiling and like competitiveness. People are yelling and laughing and screaming and having the time of their life. You see this depression, but they come in and it's like, and then instantly they start. So do not underestimate gameplay, even if it's a board game. It's something is better than nothing, 100%. Yeah. Any other questions?
So if you felt someone needed to see someone like in your role, and you said there aren't many, how do they sort of see someone with a mental health leaning who's an exercise? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and how to find us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Best thing is you've got my contact details, so you know where I am now, and we do know people, and we've got sort of networks where people do have experience in it, so we can refer people out. If this is not helpful, we can refer to other places and help you out with that.
So, like you said, you see people at St John's,
Yeah.
that's where you work.
Yeah.
Is there also like an outpatients type there, or
Not yet. We're trying.
Okay.
We're trying. We're trying. But here, so Adriana, the other EP that works here, she also works with me there. So she's got a lot of mental health experience as well. I've got contacts in the Northern Beaches that have got mental health experience. I have one in Canberra, a few in Brisbane. Like, we exist, but there's just not heaps and heaps of us because it's just not something we're taught. Well, not in detail.
Well,
Anyway.
Personally, I had no idea of the connection.
Yeah.
But you're talking about, the exercising center. Like I'm just coming back from a really bad injury, and I know how low I got, and then with the program that I follow with Emily, it's 3 times a week. I have a set walk and exercise stuff that we're doing, and I know that I was quite low. I had a really low day yesterday, and I was just sick of it. Blah 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 blah. Literally pushed myself to do the walk, and I finished. And I thought, geez, I feel a lot better.
Yeah.
That cloud had
sort of lifted a little bit.
Yeah, just the I was fed up with how my limitations, my physical limitations. I was just fed up with it.
Yeah.
But then just doing that walk, I literally felt so much better, and I thought, yeah,
it's not often that you'll feel worse for doing some sort of exercise.
Yeah.
Usually we'll feel a little bit better after doing something. So
just start doing it.
look, it's hard. Like we can say, just do it. I wish it was that
The
easy.
starting part is the hardest.
Just taking that first step.
Yeah.
As I said, for some people, it can feel like they've got concrete legs that they just won't move. So that's where a friendly face, having someone with them saying, I'll come with you. Let's go do this together. Talking, almost distracting them a little bit from the walk because, sometimes it can get a bit much. Do it with them. Have a bit of fun, have a bit of laughter, make something good at the end. There's different sorts of motivation. That's a whole nother topic. And we can use strategies for motivation, internal and external. It's a whole heap of things that we talk about. But it isn't easy. That's the one thing I will say. None of this is easy, but it is doable. It just takes a lot. And having good supports around that social connection makes it a lot easier for people that are really struggling with their mental health.
What about the diet part of it?
Yep.
Where's the best place or type of diet for your gut and things like that?
So what the research is showing us at the moment, they're looking a lot into, everyone's probably heard of it, the Mediterranean diet.
I was going to say the Mediterranean.
That's been researched extensively in terms of physical health issues. It's now being researched extensively in terms of mental health issues. We're seeing massive improvements in PTSD symptomology, anxiety symptoms. I haven't seen anything on depression, but that's just because my specific interest is more towards the PTSD aspect of things. It's not to say that it's not there, but what we do find is that the med diet, it's in essence, it's anti-inflammatory, so it reduces that inflammation in the brain. And that's from that neuroscience perspective that we're seeing. That's where the studies are pointing us that way. If you want to learn more about that, dietitian, there are some out there that specialize in this sort of thing in mental health. Once again, probably not lots and lots of them, but we're a bit of a niche. But I would say over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be everywhere. You won't be able to get rid of us. We'll pop up. But yeah. And there's probably a lot of books out there on it too, on med diet and mental health, I suspect.
So what's the med diet?
So Mediterranean diet. So it's a bit, essentially it's from memory. It's a lot of like your olive oils, red meat I think is 2 times a week, I think. Lots more fish, legumes, not heaps of pasta and rice sort of. So it's not cutting all of that out, but it's more of that sort of whole foods sort of thing. Lots of vegetables. Yeah, lots of vegetables. Yeah. If you Google med diet, you'll get pages and pages. If you Google it and then you go to the images, it usually brings you up lists. So this is what you want out of these different areas. That's usually what our dietitian says, like, this is a really good guide. So, yeah. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you. I hope you got something out of it. I'm here every week, so if you have any other questions, always feel free to ask. Adriana can also answer your questions. She's here a few days as well. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.